Malcolm Harris, a 73-year-old retired teacher, quietly entered the bank. He clutched an envelope in his hands, his face showing the weight of his concern. As he approached the counter, he noticed something troubling on his bank statement. Small, unexpected fees had been deducted from his account. These charges weren't something he had seen before, and with his fixed pension, every dollar mattered. The stress of the situation began to settle in as he prepared to address the issue with the bank. Malcolm approached the counter with a slight hesitation, still holding the envelope tightly in his hands. He reached out to Jasmine, the young teller who was working that day. She glanced at him without much interest as he began to explain his concern. "Good afternoon," Malcolm started, his voice steady but concerned. "I noticed some fees have been charged to my account, and I'm not sure why. I've had this account for many years, and I've never seen anything like this before." Jasmine barely looked up from her computer screen, her fingers still tapping away on the keyboard. She sighed and answered him quickly, "Those are standard account maintenance fees, sir. It's nothing unusual." Malcolm frowned slightly, confused. "I've been banking here for decades and I've never seen these charges before," he said, handing her his account statement, hoping she might take a closer look. Jasmine's response was cold and dismissive. She took the papers from him but barely glanced at them before pushing them back with a shrug. "It's in the fine print of your agreement. If you didn't read it, that's not my problem," she said, her voice dripping with annoyance. Malcolm felt a lump form in his throat, not knowing how to respond. He had always taken care of his finances and had never caused any trouble with his bank account. But now he was being treated as if his concerns didn't matter. The frustration in the air seemed to grow, and Malcolm felt a sense of embarrassment wash over him. He could feel the eyes of the other customers on him, and he realized they were watching this interaction unfold. Jasmine's voice grew louder as she continued, "If you want to avoid fees, just keep more money in your account. That's how it works." Her mocking tone made Malcolm feel small and unimportant. He wasn't arguing, he just wanted clarification. But the more he spoke, the more he felt like he was being belittled. He wasn't a young man anymore, and the humiliation was starting to sting. "I just want to understand what's happening with my account," Malcolm said, his voice quieter now, trying to hold on to his dignity. At that moment, Tom Pearson, the branch manager, appeared. He had been watching the exchange from a distance, arms crossed, trying to decide if it was worth getting involved. He walked over, his polished shoes clicking sharply on the floor. Tom looked at Malcolm briefly, then at Jasmine, and without asking any questions, turned his attention to the older man. "Is there a problem here?" Tom asked in a tone that suggested he wasn't really interested in hearing Malcolm's side. Jasmine, who had been visibly annoyed, immediately stood up straighter. "No, sir," she said quickly, almost as if reporting to a superior. "This customer just doesn't understand our policies." Malcolm tried again, this time explaining, "I've always kept my account in good standing and these charges are new. I just want someone to look into it." But Tom wasn't interested in hearing it. He looked at Malcolm and then back at Jasmine, his expression dismissive. "We have standard fees in place. If you can't keep the minimum balance, there's nothing we can do about it," Tom said, shrugging as if it were no big deal. Malcolm could feel his heart racing. He had always prided himself on staying calm and respectful, but the way Tom and Jasmine were treating him made it harder to keep his composure. The room felt colder now, and even the other customers who had been murmuring quietly among themselves seemed to lose interest in the situation. No one spoke up. They just continued to wait for their turn, avoiding eye contact with Malcolm. "Maybe this bank isn't the right place for you, sir," Tom said sharply, his voice cutting through the tension. His words were blunt and hurtful. They made it clear that Malcolm wasn't worth his time. The coldness of the moment hit Malcolm hard, and he felt like he had been knocked down. But little did he know, help was about to arrive. The tension in the bank grew thick as the employees and customers seemed to forget about Malcolm's situation. He stood there, feeling embarrassed and helpless. Just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get any worse, the door to the bank opened with a soft jingle. Keanu Reeves walked in. At first, he seemed like just another ordinary customer, dressed casually in a simple black jacket and jeans. His presence, however, immediately shifted the atmosphere in the room. The customers in line straightened up, some even stopped to look as though they sensed something different about him. Keanu's calm and confident manner made the space feel quieter, as if he was in complete control of the situation. Keanu walked up to the counter, and as soon as he noticed what was happening, he paused. His eyes scanned the room, briefly resting on Malcolm, who was still standing there, feeling defeated. He then looked at Tom Pearson, the branch manager, and Jasmine, the teller. There was something in Keanu's expression, something serious, that made both Tom and Jasmine freeze for a moment. Keanu stepped forward, his voice steady but firm, cutting through the tension. "Why are you treating this man like this?" he asked, his gaze locked on Tom. There was no anger in his voice, just a deep sense of fairness that made his words more powerful than any shout or demand could have been. Tom looked at Keanu, surprised. He hadn't expected someone to challenge him, especially not someone who seemed so calm and composed. Tom's face tightened, and for a brief moment he seemed unsure of how to respond. But he quickly recovered and sneered, "This is none of your business, sir." Keanu didn't back down. He looked at Malcolm, his expression softening as he turned his attention to the elderly man. "What's the problem, sir? Can I see the documents?" Keanu asked gently. Malcolm, still shocked that anyone was offering him support, handed over the papers, his hands trembling slightly. Keanu took the papers with care, his eyes quickly scanning the charges on the statement. His brow furrowed as he took in the details, and it didn't take long before he found the issue. "These charges shouldn't be here," he said quietly but firmly. "There's been a mistake." Turning his attention back to Tom, Keanu asked, "Why isn't this being reviewed? Why are these charges just automatically applied without checking if they're correct?" Tom shifted uncomfortably under Keanu's gaze. "The system is set up to apply these fees automatically," Tom explained, but his voice lacked confidence. "We don't have time to check every account. If the system says it's right, it's right." Keanu raised an eyebrow, clearly not satisfied with the answer. "So you don't review these charges? You just let the system do all the work and assume it's always right?" His voice was calm but carried an undeniable challenge. Tom hesitated, realizing he was being backed into a corner. He shifted his weight, nervously glancing around at the other customers, who had all begun to pay closer attention to the scene unfolding before them. Some people even started pulling out their phones, clearly recognizing that something significant was happening. Keanu continued, his voice steady and controlled. "You're telling me that you're willing to stand by a system that's hurting people, without checking it or even questioning it?" Keanu's words hung in the air, making Tom's position seem more and more indefensible. The tension in the bank was palpable now. Everyone was watching, and it was clear that Keanu's quiet confidence was having an effect. Tom, who had seemed so sure of himself earlier, was now visibly uncomfortable. Keanu's calmness and unwavering sense of justice had completely shifted the dynamic. The room was silent except for the sound of Keanu's calm voice as he questioned the fairness of what had happened. The tension in the bank was growing thicker with every word Keanu spoke. As he stood there, calmly holding Malcolm's bank documents, his eyes never left Tom Pearson. Keanu's voice was steady, but it was clear that he was about to expose something much bigger than a simple mistake. "This isn't just about one account," Keanu said, his voice cutting through the silence. "I've been hearing about similar issues from others, especially elderly customers who might not notice these discrepancies. People who don't have the energy to fight back or even know they're being charged unfairly." The words seemed to hang in the air as the room began to shift. For the first time, the customers who had been standing quietly in line started to speak up. Slowly, one by one, people began sharing their own experiences with unexpected fees and charges that they had never been informed about. A middle-aged man near the back raised his hand. "I've had the same fees for months now," he said. "I didn't even know where they came from. I thought it was just me." Another woman, standing in front of the line, spoke up. "Same here. These charges just appeared out of nowhere. I didn't realize it until I saw my account balance drop." The realization hit like a wave. The customers who had once been too absorbed in their own frustrations to care, now saw that they were not alone. They were all dealing with the same issue, fees that had been imposed without explanation and without review. Tom, who had been standing with a forced smile, now looked uneasy. He shifted from foot to foot, trying to maintain some form of control, but it was clear that his authority was slipping away. Keanu's calm but powerful words had sparked a shift in the room, and the atmosphere had completely changed. Keanu turned back to Tom. "This is wrong, Tom," he said firmly. "And if you don't fix it, I'm going to make sure the public knows about it. I'll go to the press, post it on social media, and let everyone see how this bank is treating its loyal customers, especially those who are most vulnerable." The threat of public exposure weighed heavily on Tom. He had always been able to hide behind the rules, behind the system, but Keanu's quiet challenge was putting him in a corner. He could feel the eyes of the room on him, and he knew that if this story got out, it could ruin his career. His confidence was slipping fast. "Look, I'm just doing my job here," Tom muttered, his voice cracking slightly. "These are the policies. There's nothing I can do." Keanu wasn't backing down. That's the problem, Tom. It's all about following the rules without thinking about the people these rules are hurting. He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. You have a chance to make it right. Reverse the charges, all of them. Apologize to Malcolm here and now, in front of everyone. That's the only way you can fix this. The pressure was on and Tom could feel it. He glanced nervously at Jasmine, the young teller, who was standing quietly, her eyes avoiding the situation. There was no way out now. Finally, Tom sighed heavily. Fine, he said, defeated. I'll reverse the charges. All of them. He turned to Malcolm, his face pale and filled with reluctance. I'm sorry for the inconvenience and for the way you were treated, Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. It was wrong and we'll fix it. The room seemed to exhale in unison. The customers who had been watching were relieved, some even nodding in approval. Keanu, standing with his arms crossed, gave a small nod of satisfaction, watching as the bank manager followed through on his promise. As the charges were reversed, the tension in the room finally began to fade. The customers who had been watching in silence now felt a sense of justice. Keanu had shown them that standing up for what's right could make a difference. And for Malcolm it was a small victory, a reminder that no matter how old you are, you can still make your voice heard. Keanu looked at Malcolm one last time and offered him a small smile. You've got your dignity back, he said softly. Then, without another word, Keanu turned and walked out of the bank, leaving a trail of respect and admiration in his wake. The events at the bank didn't end when Keanu Reeves left. The confrontation had been caught on camera by one of the customers, and within hours the video was all over social media. People couldn't stop talking about what had happened. The powerful moment when Keanu stood up for Malcolm, exposing the unfair treatment of elderly customers, went viral. News outlets picked up the story, and the video spread like wildfire, sparking discussions about fairness, respect, and how businesses treat their customers. As the video gained attention, corporate stepped in. The bank's headquarters saw the viral video and immediately launched an investigation into what had happened. They could no longer ignore the public outcry. The truth was out, and it was clear that the way Malcolm and other customers had been treated was unacceptable. It didn't take long for Tom Pearson, the branch manager, to face the consequences. He was fired from his position. The bank issued an official apology, acknowledging their mistake and promising to review their policies. They also made sure to clarify that the unfair fees would be refunded to all affected customers. The apology was a small step toward regaining some trust, but the damage had been done. People had seen how Tom and the bank staff treated their customers, and it would take a long time for the bank to rebuild its reputation. A few days after the incident, Malcolm received an unexpected package in the mail. It was from Keanu Reeves. Inside, he found a signed poster from The Matrix, one of Keanu's most famous movies. Along with the poster, there was a handwritten note from Keanu that read, "Dear Malcolm, you didn't need me to stand up for you. You already had the strength to do that on your own. I just wanted to remind you that fighting for what's right is always worth it. I hope this makes you smile. Keep standing up for yourself and for others. You matter." Malcolm's hands shook as he read the note. He couldn't believe it. A simple but meaningful gesture from someone he had admired for years. Keanu Reeves, the actor known for his roles as heroes in movies, had gone out of his way to personally thank him. It wasn't just a celebrity sending a message. It felt personal, like Keanu truly understood what Malcolm had gone through. The note, along with the signed poster, filled Malcolm with a sense of pride and gratitude. He had always taught his students the importance of standing up for what's right, but now he felt it more deeply than ever. This small but thoughtful gesture from Keanu gave him a newfound strength. It reminded him that even when things seem impossible, there are always people who are willing to fight for justice and fairness. For the first time in a long while, Malcolm felt truly valued. He had stood up for himself and it had made a difference. The support from Keanu not only lifted his spirits but also gave him the confidence to continue speaking up for what was right. He kept the poster framed on his wall, a reminder of that day, of the power of standing up no matter who you are or how old you might be. As he looked at the signed poster, he smiled to himself. The world wasn't perfect, but at least now he knew that sometimes when you fight for what's right, the right people show up to help.